Hello, I'm Kalin Chang. Thank you for letting me interview. I understand this was a very traumatic thing to witness. If possible, can you please provide some information about yourself and your connection to the accident, 9/11?
Um, I'm not a very good storyteller, so I'm just going to tell you what happened according to my perspective. I used to work on the 52nd floor of Two World Trade Center for a company called Guy Carpenter, which is a Marsh McLennan company. This is MMC. Anyway, I worked at Guy Carpenter from 2001 to 2006. It was my first job out of college, so I was very fresh and green. And I started work in July, and 9/11 obviously happened 2 months later. Okay.
Okay. Can you please describe the incident you experienced and where were you when it happened?
So, yes. Where do I start? I guess it was a regular day. I mean, I had just started work, in July, so it was just a regular day. I believe it was a Monday or Tuesday. Usually, I got to work around 7:25. I had a Swedish boss at that time, very strict, and usually work starts at 7:30, but he always wanted me there at 7:20 or 7:25, earlier than other people started, which was great. It's good training for a new person. Where was I? Actually, so after I put down my attaché bag on my seat, I went down to America's Best Coffee down on the first floor, the basement floor of the World Trade Center. And it was a little push cart. Got a coffee, and when I walked back to the elevator door had just opened, and then the first plane hit. It shook the entire building, and I almost got trampled. I almost walked in, but people rushed out, and the whole building shook. I remember the first thing I remember was people were stepping all over each other. I saw people getting trampled, and I was very young at the time, so I wasn't aware of what was happening. But from what people told me later, they were all recollected the 1990 car bombing down in the basement of the World Trade Center. So that's why people were so afraid of, so they ran for their lives. But I just kind of slowly turned around because they were running toward me. So I just kind of turned around and got out of the way, and then made my way outside. Okay?
Okay. What are a few of the most memorable things or actions you remember the most clear about the incident?
To be honest, a lot of this was like a movie. I felt like an action hero that day. I can remember the first thing was I walked outside and I saw papers flying everywhere. I was just standing outside, and I actually thought it was some kind of paper, Tinker Tape parade or some sort of party or a movie being filmed, because it was just papers flying everywhere. I remember in the sky there were just papers flying everywhere. And I called my father, and I said, "Hey, there's something going on down here at the World Trade, and it's like a big party down here. Everyone's outside on the streets." And I called my uncle Ang Lee. No, I'm sorry. Ang Lee had called my father just to check up on me. And we're pretty tight. And I just remember just telling him there's something going on here. But after a couple hours, I remember not being able to reach them. There was no cell phone service because obviously the antenna for all your cellular, we didn't have iPhones back then. In 2001, we didn't have iPhones. We were using like Nokias, I believe. So we didn't have any digital images. We didn't have any of these JPEGs or something. We did, but it was all computer. But I remember being on the street and not knowing where to go. And to be honest, I remember seeing one of my colleagues, someone of a higher level than me at that time. And I asked him, I said, "What do we do?" He's like, "What do you mean, what do you do? Go home. Just get out of here. Go home." and I didn't know where to go because I was not, ready for something like this. I was 21 at that time. Okay. So what did I remember most clearly about that day? I remember during the incident, I actually stopped by a bodega, and a bodega is a deli. And I stood outside and wanted to buy a Diet Coke because I had all this adrenaline. I got a Diet Coke. I remember getting that. And I also bought a disposable camera. I actually remember buying a disposable camera. Maybe it's because I'm Asian. I'm not sure. But I got a disposable camera. So I do have some wonderful, wonderful pictures, but they're all in print. And they're all in the United States. Actually, that picture that I had sent to you in that poem, that was taken by my disposable camera. And every single time you develop that film, there's always that red stripe on the flag. It's incredible. But what was the things that I remember from the incident? I remember being so close to the World Trade that I could hear people jump and hitting the floor. I remember when I got out of, when I took a boat across after the World Trade, I remember eating ice cream and gambas, And I had my father picked me, when they saw me, they were in tears. I remember my father just giving me a 6-pack of beer and just saying, hey, relax. And I remember my friends coming to see me afterwards. And all good things, okay? Even though it wasn't, it was one of the most terrible days of U.S. history, but it was that day was a pivotal point in life, actually. And I didn't know it.
What did it do to your life? How did it affect it?
How did it affect my life? I think we've known each other for quite some time, but you don't know my background.
Not really.
9/11, after the 9/11 incident, it made me extremely fearless. Extremely fearless. I went skydiving. I lived down in Bolivia. I lived down in Brazil. I would fly to Monaco on the weekends. I would be in Las Vegas. I had no fear. And I was living like that. Every day was the last day of my life. For many, many years. I knew how to have a good time. But it made me fearless. It made me want to start my own company at age 26. It made me want to be an entrepreneur. There were so many things that I learned from this experience. It shaped me to be the person I am today. I see your question is, when did I realize something was wrong?
Yes.
So obviously when the doors of the elevators opened, I was walking in, the whole building shook, so I knew something was wrong.
Yes.
I knew something was wrong. So that was, just seeing the elevator, people run out from the elevator just for dear life. I knew something was wrong. And like I said, most people that were in the World Trade Center had been there for maybe 10, 15 years. The older people remember this car bombing that was there in the 1990s. So this is not the first incident. This is actually the second incident at the World Trade Center.
Oh.
Okay. The people around me, what were they doing?
Oh, they were running.
They were running. And I remember, the one thing I remember so vividly was I saw shoes everywhere. The shoes of some women, the high heels just were everywhere because people were getting trampled like a stampede out of the elevator. So everyone was rushing. And thank goodness I was going down to get coffee at that time, because if I had gone up, I probably wouldn't have made it down, because either the elevators would have stopped, but they were telling people to stay in the building. I don't know if you knew that, but they had sirens saying, everyone stay in the buildings, everyone stay in the buildings.
Did the buildings collapse after?
Yes. So all my colleagues that were there for a long time, they actually ran down the stairwell. So all my colleagues, so I don't know if you know, Marsh McLennan had floors 48 through 54 in two World Trade Center. And they had 90 through 100 in one World Trade Center. So all my colleagues in two World Trade Center from floors 48 to floors 54, we all made it out. All my colleagues that were in one World Trade Center from 90 to 100 did not make it out because the second plane hit, like, I think it was like floor 79 or something like that. So anyone above 80th floor, they did not survive. They couldn't get them because the plane had just went into the building. Okay. But yeah, it was awful, to say the least, to see all the families without parents. We had the memorial at St. Patrick's on Fifth Avenue, and I could see the kids and wives or husbands that had been widowed that day. I mean, it wrapped around the corner, and it's a day I'll never forget. You know, it's definitely a day. I've spoken about it a lot of times afterwards, and it's almost been a fatigue, but this is the first time I brought it. You know, you bringing this up is the first time I thought about it in a long time. Did I see any warning signs or indicators before the accident? No. I was in the building. You know, I was getting coffee just like a regular morning. You know, I got to work, like I said, 7:25, 7:20.
You went to get coffee.
I went upstairs already. So I lost my attaché bag or something like that, but I came out with my life, so I'm pretty appreciative of that. So, you know, I didn't have any signs of this happening. The trauma. Witnessing this, because I actually, if you don't have my photos now, but when I stood outside the Bottega, when I went outside and I stood at that deli after getting my Diet Coke and buying a disposable camera, I stood outside because it was like watching a train wreck. You know, you're just watching this building on fire. There was nothing you could do. You felt like you're in a movie. You're just watching this building burn. And I actually saw the second plane. I had pictures of the second plane coming in slowly, just bomb, 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 like slowly. So I have pictures of this, and I wish I could share them with you, but I tried looking online if I had stored them. Actually, this reminds me that I have to store these pictures on my phone somewhere because, like I said, at that time, it was a disposable camera. We didn't have iPhones or Huawei's at that time or something like this. We only had disposable and Nokias, and yeah, I don't know what they were, but we had, you know, regular cameras with SIM cards inside. So I saw the second plane coming in, and I actually saw that it got so hot in the buildings that people were jumping from the buildings.
Off
from
the
you know,
buildings?
huh?
Off the buildings?
Out of the buildings. Yeah. And I could hear them because I was about 50 to 60 meters away. You can hear them hit the pavement, you know? Because they were, just think about it. Rocket fuel burns at like 2,000 degrees. Your body's, you'd rather, you know, take your own life than let me burn to death. That's probably, I'm sure that is probably one of the worst feelings. Undescribable, I'm not sure. But I after that moment, after the hearing, the grounds hit the bodies hit the ground, I actually kind of lost it. Like, you know, like your mind wanted to be somewhere else. So I remember after that happened, I started to walk around the World Trade area because the police had already started directing people. And here's a funny story. I actually walked the same block 4 times. I just kept, because they kept directing you, left, go left, go left, go left. So you're actually making a square around like the World Trade Center area. And I had to walk the same block like 2 or 3 or 4 times before I realized I'm walking in a square. I had completely lost it. You know, I just completely, like, I felt like I was in a movie.
Wait, the police told you guys to keep on walking around the World Trade Center after it got bombed.
They had cornered everything. They had cornered everything off. So basically, at the end of the block, the police would tell you go this way. And at the end of another block, the police would say go that way. So if you just walked listening to the police. You were just walking in blocks, like a square block around that area, you know?
So after they saw 2 planes hit the Trade Center, they still were like, oh, there's no chance there would be a third one. They decided to make you guys walk around it.
To be honest with you, I'm sure they were just as scared as we were.
Understood.
And I'm sure there was no protocol inside their
training.
Their training, that because this is, and so
Expected.
when I knew that I was walking around the same block, I actually started walking uptown. And, I was walking with my head, I was walking reverse. You're just looking at the building in front of you. So I'm walking, backwards. I'm walking backwards the whole time. You just kind of, I was carrying my tie. I loosened my tie already. And I was just watching this building. And it's 110 stories high. And I'm watching it, just walking in reverse, back, and just walking. And I could hear this crack of thunder, just like a loud sound. When the first building came down, I heard this loud sound. It's like very loud crack of thunder, it sounded like. And at that moment, I told myself, I'm dead. If that building topples like this, it'll cover 100 blocks. It'll literally cover 100 blocks. Maybe, I don't know how many, maybe it's not even a mile, but it'll cover about 100, the size of the building. So thank God it didn't do this. So all I saw at the top of the building, at the top of the World Trade, I believe it started smoking. And I saw, it started to make sounds. And then it started to topple, but it imploded rather than topple. It didn't topple
yes,
like this. It toppled imploded. So the top was so heavy that it imploded, and then at the bottom it shot out.
So everybody inside died.
Yes. Yes. And by the time, before I could even get away, because here's the funny thing about your body. Your body is extremely resilient. At that time, I had already told myself there's no point in running because it's such a big building that you're dead. You're dead. If it topples, it'll crush you. And you just didn't know which way it would topple. Left, right, forward, back. You didn't know. But it had imploded. But the funny thing is, when I looked at the building, and I told you I was walking backwards, my body had already, when I heard that sound, my body had already turned around and my head was still looking at the building and I was running. I didn't realize I was running. I remember just looking at the building, but my body was already running the other way. And before I got to my destination, my next destination, I had run into a parking garage, underground parking garage, because Wall Street at that time had many parking garages for people that worked in the area. So I ran into a parking garage, but before I could get there, all the whole building had imploded and just shot out like this. And I was covered from head to toe in concrete debris. Everything except for my eyes were white, like white concrete powder, like a calcium carbonate or limestone, just complete concrete. My hair, I had a whole layer. I looked like a snowman, basically. And I remember I had a very nice pinstripe suit on that day, like a window pane suit. And it was completely covered. I remember I had a yellow tie that day. I remember exactly what I wore. And I was covered. So I went into the bathroom and I said, "Can I use your bathroom?" And the parking attendant's like, "What's going on outside?" And I just remember saying, "Can I use your bathroom? Can I use your bathroom? Can I use your bathroom?" And he's like, "Yes, you can use the bathroom. It's right there." And I just kept repeating, "Can I use your bathroom?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's right there." So I ran into the bathroom and he's like, "What's going on outside?" I'm like, "It's mayhem outside." I'm like, "I just need to use your bathroom." So I locked myself in the bathroom for, I think it was about a good half hour, because all of Wall Street right now was like a nuclear holocaust. It was, like covered in a thick layer